Hello, and welcome to Oddity Week Day number 4, as well as video number 50, which means another test of the celebration system at the end of the video, bringing us back by a much earlier request to Japan to look at another highly angular prototype vehicle intended for both road use and eventual racing at Le Mans, the Domu Zero. As a side note, I don't remember exactly who requested this several months ago, but if you're still with us on the channel, please drop a mention in the comments, and I will be happy to give you credit in next week's video, as by the time this is uploaded, tomorrow's video will already be recorded. The spelled Dome, but pronounced Domu, company, the name being an anglicized translation of the Japanese name, forgive me for pronunciation, Kabushiki Gaisha Domu, where Kabushiki Gaisha roughly translates to joint stock company, and Domu translates as child's dream or childhood dream, came about as the passion project of Mr. Minoru Hayashi, who first cut his teeth racing modified and rebodied Honda coupes in the 1960s. Self-taught as a race car designer and engineer, he maintained it as an avocation for a decade or so, moving on to open-wheel designs before founding the Domu Company in 1975 to have a more consistent and germane income stream to support his racing activities. He planned to establish himself as a boutique sports car manufacturer, a business model that was starting to gain some ground in Western markets, but was largely unexplored territory in Japan, with his designs all directly informed by the company's racing activities. To this end, their first car broke cover in 1978 at the Geneva Motor Show and actually made quite a splash. Working intensively with a small team, apparently the work was so intense that the 4 married team members all ended up getting divorced during the development period, most of them with motorsports backgrounds, the Zero road car concept was powered by a 2.8-liter Nissan Straight 6 producing a modest 147 horsepower. But, as seems to be a common theme with this week's vehicles, it was placed in a body that tipped the scales at just over 2,000 pounds, so the power-to-weight ratio ranked it with contemporaneous lower-tier 911 models. A ZF-sourced 5-speed manual, double wishbone suspension, and 4-wheel disc brakes completed the mechanicals, all packaged in a tube-frame chassis and delightfully wedge-shaped body that reminds me quite strongly of the Alfa Romeo Carrabbo showcased 10 years previous in Paris. The silvered bodywork is actually also putting me in mind of the DeLorean, and maybe Hayashi-san should have tried to license the design to John DeLorean for production instead of what they went with. I do like the original DeLorean, but come on, maybe they could have done both. Kept the DMC as it was, called it the DMC-1, and this could have been the DMC-2. Would have had more power than the Peugeot Renault Volvo V6 that they put in the DeLorean as well, not by a huge amount, but the extra 700 pounds of weight savings wouldn't have been inconsiderable either. Anyway, Hayashi-san found himself unable, unfortunately, to make it through the bureaucratic quagmire of Japanese road homologation, and decided instead to try and sell the Zero in foreign markets, creating an export version called the Zero P2. Despite changes to meet U.S. road regulations, 2 motor show appearances in 1979 in the U.S., and a very favorable review from Road and Track that praised its driving dynamics and build quality, despite a tight cabin, it also failed to obtain U.S. DOT approval, and so the only cash flows that the Zero ever produced actually came from toy licensing deals. At the same time, this was apparently lucrative enough to keep the company going, as 1979 saw the introduction of a race-focused Zero RL. Gone was the Nissan Straight 6, replaced by another F1-derived engine, this time a brilliant-sounding Cosworth V8 making up to 450 horsepower. Gone too was the bodywork and tube chassis, replaced with a remarkably narrow aluminum monocoque and low-drag bodywork optimized for the long Le Mans straights. Frankly, it looked more like a cross between a stock car and a funny car than a Le Mans prototype, but not in a bad way. On its debut outing at the 1979 Silverstone 6 Hours, it managed to qualify in 3rd, a remarkable feat, particularly given that it was competing against a field featuring a large number of Porsche 935s, but they finished in 12th after gearbox issues cost them an hour in the pits. Their entry at Le Mans in 1979 marked only the second time a Japanese-built vehicle had contested the race at all, and it was the first time that one was considered to be in with a shout of an overall victory, at least on a pure lap speed or pace metric. The race itself, however, went similarly poorly, with the 2 entries both retiring after qualifying in the upper quarter of the field, one with a blown head gasket and the other with fueling issues. Entries in 1980 and 1981 yielded a consistent set of results as well. Unfortunately, it was retirements all around, although we did at least get some testing footage with decent audio. Let's have a brief listen. After this, Domu took a step back from building complete race cars and started working as a constructor and support team for Toyota's racing efforts, eventually diversifying into other series and manufacturer collaborations until they returned to La Sarthe in the early 2000s. But that's a story for a different day. That brings us to the end of today's video. As always, thank you for giving me some of the precious moments of your day, and hope you'll be back for tomorrow's video, which will be a bit longer and takes us all the way back to 1902. Promises to be quite interesting. A large piece of digital cake is offered for whoever guesses the subject right between now and tomorrow when the premiere screen shows up. And as promised, here is the test of the celebration system. Whee!